In today's Cutter Consortium webinar, Masa Maeda will show your organization how to embrace value innovation. You will gain a foundation you can use to influence the improvement of your organization's work environment, bringing to light the kind of innovative thinking that boosts team performance. You will also discover how to be an agent of change for the better use of tools that enhance development and foster innovation. Masa Maeda is a Cutter Senior Consultant with the Agile Product and Project Management practice. Masa's career spans 25 years in which he has worked for Fortune 500 companies as well as startups, and in many occasions was a founding member of those startups. With roles from software development to management, he was responsible for introducing Agile to many of these organizations. Dr. Maeda is the Lean Agile editor for Software Guru, has a PhD in Artificial Intelligence, a master's degree in Intelligent Systems Engineering and Information Science from the University of Tokushima in Japan, and a bachelor's degree in Computer Engineering from the National University of Mexico. Welcome, Masa.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. And, well, let's begin. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to take you through a journey in which we're going to be taking as starting point the iron triangle. I'm assuming that this will be something familiar to most of the audience, if not to everybody. And then we'll explore what value is, what quality is, then start talking about innovation, and then conclude with what value innovation, which is the actual main topic of this presentation. So there is hard data that indicates, and this is actually from last year, the level of success that companies are having when creating products or services. And it's actually a little bit of shameful to see how low the percentage of success is. The evaluations made to determine whether a product was successful, it was challenged, or if it failed, follows in good measure the criteria established by the iron triangle. And what is also shown is that doing projects following the iron triangle, we get a 45 cost overrun and a 63% time overrun, which is still, definitely something that we should be somewhat alarmed about. So we also have data that indicates that for the standard software product, about 20% of the functionality of the software product actually delivers around 80% of the project value. This has nothing to do with the Pareto principle. It's just a coincidence that the numbers are similar. But what is important here is to question, okay, if 20% of the functionality gives me around 80% of project value, and we know that we have a high percentage of cost and time overrun, then if we were able to identify that functionality, those aspects of our products and services that are either never used or rarely used, if we could identify that very early, then maybe those cost and time overruns wouldn't happen. We could probably even finish earlier. So how can we do that? How can we identify this? Well, on the one hand, many companies, many organizations, and many teams fall into the habit of trying to offer way too much to customers. And this goes not only to end users, it goes also to internal customers. And that's very risky. What we should do is identify what it is that the customer actually values and focus on actually delivering that value. That will save us so much, headaches and extra work, waste, etc. So the question is, why, right? Why do we base the creation of our products and services on those criteria? And another question will be, what can we do differently so that we can do better? So on the one hand, there is value. The iron triangle doesn't talk about value. Nonetheless, this should be actually the primary focus to guide our efforts to create a product or service. So the question will be, what is value? Well, value actually has to be defined by the customer. It is him or her who has to tell us what is value or valuable to me is such and such thing. It's not a good idea for us to try to figure out or imagine what it is that the customer actually wants. So let's say, for example, we have a pile of leaves, right? This could be seen differently. For example, to a gardener, a pile of leaves could mean, well, this was a lot of work, and I want to just get rid of it. So find me a garbage can where to put it and get rid of it. But to another person, this pile could mean, oh, I can use this to create compost, and and I can improve my garden by using it. Or to a little child, it could mean fun. Hey, there's a pile of leaves, I can go and play with it and have a good time. So, but this tells us is not really a good idea for us to try to just figure it out by ourselves. We have to conversate with the customer. We have to get close to the customer. We have to understand what the customer needs are. And also, we have to assume the responsibility of helping the customer understand and identify what it is that is valuable to them. Now, there is also value towards the enterprise. So the value to the enterprise has to be defined by the enterprise itself. So it's our job as members of an enterprise or a team or an organization or a group to understand what it is value to us. But here's the trick. What we have to make sure is that that definition of value that we create is in tune with the definition of value to the customer. If we fail to do that, then we won't be able to be effective in creating what the customer needs. So we have to make sure that it's always in alignment. And the value to customer has to be above the value to the enterprise. Why is that? Well, because if we don't do that, then we will have a tendency to either cut corners or create a different kind of solution that also may benefit the enterprise in the short run. On the long run, it will actually work against us. So how do we generate value? Well, there's different strategies. Some organizations go about doing radical changes. For example, our company is not doing too well or our team is not doing too well. Let's adopt a new methodology. For example, let's go and start adopting CMMI, or let's take PSP, TSP, or something like that. And what this means is let's forget what we have, let's start anew, and this has lots of challenges. On the one hand, it could cost a lot of money, it could take a long time. It also, more often than not, generates resistance to change. There's going to be people or groups who might not be willing to be part of that change because they are afraid of what that will mean to them personally or professionally. So it is a lot better if we take an evolutionary approach. It would be better if we say, hey, what if our starting point is where we are right now? We're not going to change our process or our methodology. What we're going to do is, taking that as a starting point, begin to make small, gradual improvements, step by step, little by little. What that means is that the resistance to change will be minimal, if any, because actually we do that every day. We always try to find ways to do things better. But if we have a natural approach that gives us some sort of discipline or guidance as to how to do that more effectively, then we will be able to do better. And in the end, the ratio of improvement will be actually higher. We will be able to do much better more quickly than if we do a radical change. The way to manage the flow of value increases if we use effective visualization. And what do I mean by that? we always use tools to be able to track and to quantify what's happening with the project. However, oftentimes, some of those tools that we use actually reflect the idealization of the project and not the real estate of the project. So what we want to do is have tools that allows us to really see what's really happening day to day with our project. And why do we want to do that? Because we want to be able to effectively make decisions and determine courses of actions, and also to be able to report to stakeholders how the project is going in real life. Oftentimes it happens that when we report the status of a project, we show that things are going pretty well. We're on green light, requirements are going well, and we're going now into the phase of design, we're going to implementation, and so on, and everything looks great. And if, let's say that we have a project that takes 2 years, and the first year and a half things look awesome, everything is on the schedule, and eventually, by the month number 19, all of a sudden we are in yellow light. And of course, nobody executes perfectly all of the time, so stakeholders will say, well, that's fine, it's a small bump on the road, but we'll recover quickly and we'll be back on track. But by the next month, we're actually on red light. And then people start wondering what happened. And it's when we start reporting that, well, we have integration problems, we have defects everywhere, and so on. And then the question is, how come we didn't detect these problems earlier? And the reason is because we were not tracking the reality. We were just tracking the idealization. So we want tools that actually don't do that. We want tools that can let us know as quickly, as soon as possible, what exactly is going on so that we can take action before it's too late. We also want to be able to measure value in a very effective way. And what we want is to have quantitative tools that allows us to understand what is the amount of work that we have in progress at a given time, and understand how much time it's going to take us to deliver those tasks. If we have the capability of doing so, then we can determine whether or not we're going to be actually working on a schedule or not, and also be able to make decisions and make changes to avoid getting late on our project. And at the same time, be able to understand if the quality that we're generating is the quality that the customer expects. And even more importantly, what we have to make sure is that the value and the quality that we are providing to the customer surpasses the expectations. What this means is if the customer tells us, we want quality to be, say, if we put a number on it, I want quality to be 0.7, well, what we might want to do is to deliver the customer a quality of 0.8. So quantitative analysis of actual progress is very, very important. So the customer defines, the same way that the customer defines what value is, the customer has to define what quality is. We should not go about trying to figure out. We have to make sure that it's a common understanding and that there's an agreement between the team, the organization, and the customer as to what is that minimum level of quality that is expected. And as I mentioned, we should surpass it. And I could mention as an example, in the case of the automobile industry, let's say that the U.S. regulatory organization say, we want the spark plug to be of quality 0.6. And American manufacturers of spark plugs create spark plugs of exactly that level of quality. But the Japanese automakers say, well, we actually should create spark plugs of quality 0.8 because this actually satisfies better the customer. So we really don't care what regulations say. What we have to care about is the highest possible value and quality that we can give to our customers. And that, as a consequence, is going to increase sales and is going to increase market share. So in the end, how do we measure quality? And this is a question that I was asked at many organizations, companies that I worked for in the past. My boss will come and say, hey, Masa, how do we measure quality? And I will tell them, well, it's very simple. the better, the broader the customer's smile, the better off we are. That means the better the quality. And of course, they will think I was joking. They say, no, I'm serious. Please tell me, how do we measure? Are we going to count number of defects per 1,000 lines of code, etc.? They will start coming up with different measurements. And I will tell them, you know what? Yes, that is important. But in the end, what really matters is how happy the customer is. Because we could create a product that has 0 defects, and the customer is entirely unhappy with the product. Is not buying it. Then what did we achieve, right? So yes, we have to take care of those measurements, but in the end, what we have to really focus on is on making sure that we're going to make the customer happy. And also we have to take into account what the consequences could be of not providing the right level of quality. So it's not only a matter of whether or not the customer is happy, it's a matter of, hey, what we do or what we don't do in terms of value and quality can have a tremendous impact on the customer. You know, it could have very serious consequences. And we don't want to be responsible for that kind of things, right? So if we look at it from the standpoint of the enterprise, then quality is important because in the end, it's going to have a financial impact. And, you know, there's countless cases that shows how expensive, how costly it is to the enterprise to not do things right. So we have, data that indicates that close to 60 billion annual loss in the U.S. because of rework. And then there's this case of the, computer system that was developed for the child support agency, in which the losses are very high and still happening. You know, the story is not over. And there's other agencies that have developed similar systems at a fraction of the cost in a very successful way. So to the enterprise, you know, if you want to think about quality from the standpoint of the enterprise, I will say that quality is the avoidance and the elimination of waste with the purpose of adding value. And what does that mean? What that means is that what we should do is make sure to not generate defects to begin with, and to not generate any other kind of waste. So by waste, obviously, I am talking only about defects. Waste can happen in many different ways. For example, a kind of waste will be the generation of too much documentation. Another kind of waste will be if we have a process that requires too many verifications. We need too many people to sign that something actually happened or didn't happen. There could be a kind of waste. Another kind of waste could be having to spend too much time looking for information. You know, I had a case of a customer that operates under ISO 9000, and some of the employees were telling me that it could take to them up to 1 full work day to find a document that their boss was asking them to get, because just finding what they need in that universe of documentation they have is really difficult, and that's a kind of waste, and so on. So we have to make sure that we eliminate waste that we already have, and then that we avoid generating new kinds of waste. And in the end, of course, the end purpose of this is to add value to the enterprise and or value to the customer. So all that said, let's talk a little bit about innovation. So what's innovation? Well, innovation is the successful introduction of something new from other things that already exist. Now, by successful, what I mean is that new something that is created has to have commercial success. It has to be something that is successful on the market. And it can come from anywhere. It can be something as simple as, say, I get inspired by a beach ball, and then I decide to create some new kind of, home appliance that can be used. It can be something very simple. It can be something that works by adding value at a different level. For example, we can be inspired by by a deck of cards and then create a tool that allows me to do estimation for the duration of tasks for the implementation of a software product, for example. So it can come from anywhere. It can be very simple. It can be very complex. And it's something that doesn't require necessarily of a large company, a large group, specialized people, or something, say, of the impact that, for example, some of the Apple products have. We don't have to come and create a new iPhone or a new iPad. It can be something very small and very simple, but that has a very high impact, either towards the company or towards the customer. So let's get a little bit more into this to start talking about value innovation. So I'm going to put an example. Let's say that we have 2 new products. And these 2 new products actually were created by 2 entirely new companies. What this means is that there is no previous history. So there is no corporate image, and let's say there is no marketing efforts behind the product. So the only thing that the customer has available about the product is the product itself. So the customer has 2 products in front of him. Both of them offer the same value, the same features, the same characteristics, and they have the same level of quality. The question is, which one would you buy? And I have asked this question to many audiences in different countries, and every single time, one of the first answers that I get is, oh, well, the one that is cheaper. If I have 2 products, same value, same quality, then I can save myself some money. I buy the cheapest one. But there's one other argument that also comes 100% of the time. Eventually somebody says, well, I will buy the one that I like better. And this is very interesting because, yes, those seem to be the prevalent criteria. Either I buy the one that saves me money or I buy the one that I like best. But now, if we explore that a little bit, the question will be, how many people will be willing to actually sacrifice cost for looks? That is, how many people will be willing to say, well, I don't have enough money to buy the one that I like best, but instead of buying the cheapest one right now, I'd rather wait a couple of months to save some money to then buy the one that I like best. And what has happened 100% of the time is that a larger percentage of the audience is actually willing to do that. Excuse me. So it's not 100%. There is no such a thing. But the largest percentage of people actually rather do that. I'd rather sacrifice money for the sake of getting what I like best. So that means that in terms of value to the customer, that actually is important. It's more important than money itself. And what does that mean from the standpoint of value innovation? Well, what that means is that if one of these 2 companies that offer these new products went about putting effort towards innovation in terms of the looks of the product, has a higher chance of selling more units, and therefore is gaining a competitive advantage. Now, if we go to the next step of the example, let's say, again, there's 2 new companies. Nobody knows anything about them, so there's no external influence on the decision-making from the customer standpoint. And these 2 products have the same value, the same quality. They're equally attractive, and I should add here that they cost the same, okay? Same cost, same value, same quality, and they are equally attractive to customers. Such that when we ask the audience, exactly 50% of the audience prefers one over the other. So there's no differentiator, okay? Now, let's say that sales begin, and several months after, we make a study to determine which one was the winner. And what we end up realizing is that both companies sold exactly the same number of units. So there's no difference. Okay, same value, same quality, same attractiveness, same cost, and both companies sold exactly the same number of units. So what's the deal, right? Well, if one of these two companies actually put innovation as part of what the company does, in terms of the way the product is being created, the way it is manufactured, distributed, designed, etc., that means that it is likely, it's not 100%, but it is more likely that this company went through saving costs. That is, the production and distribution costs were lower than the other one. So obviously, even though they have the same amount of sales in dollars, the company that did innovation probably earned more, and that also is a competitive advantage. But even more, the next product could be created in less time at a lower cost, and it could be probably more attractive. So even though at this moment we are even, for the next product we might be doing better. So my point is, if we go about doing innovation in terms of the value towards the customer and innovation in terms of the value towards the enterprise, we may end up getting a competitive advantage. So we have to take that into account. And this motivated me to create a structure that I call the Lean Agile Prism. The reason why I call it the Lean Agile Prism was because utilizing lean thinking and agile thinking is what allowed me to come to this realization. So the Lean Agile Prism, for some reason, is not showing at this moment. Okay, there seems to be a little bit of a problem with the slide, but imagine a prism that has a 3-point base. And the 3 points on the base, one of them is constraints, the other one is quality, and the other one is innovation. And the pinnacle of the prism is value. So what this means is constraints is actually what we use as the iron triangle. And what this tells us is those 3 elements of the iron triangle, which are cost, scope, and schedule, should be taken into account as constraints for the creation of the product or service. Because that's a reality. I mean, we are always going to be bound by those aspects. But those aspects shouldn't be what determine how we're going to create a product. They should be aspects that we take into account to create a product. And what we should really consider for the creation of the product itself is first and foremost value. What is the value that the customer expects? Quality, what is the minimum quality that the customer expects? And then innovation, which is in which way can we innovate to be able to deliver the highest possible value with the highest possible quality to the customer by at the same time be able to optimize the usage of those constraints. So value innovation is a framework for sustainable, actionable, and evolutionary activity. What does that mean? Sustainable means that we want to have our team and our organization be able to work at a sustainable pace. That is, we want to be able to work and deliver value flow continuously in an uninterrupted fashion. It's not uncommon to see teams and organizations working on a project in which typically at the beginning of the project, the amount of work that is done is not very high. And as the deadline approaches, people start working harder and harder and harder until everybody's working overtime, they're working weekends, you name it. And then, of course, there's the consequences of people's health starts going down, the quality starts getting worse, we don't finish things on time, etc. So what we want to do is change that way of working and make sure that we work all the time at a pace that is comfortable to us, that allows us to actually focus on delivering value and producing good quality products. Actionable means that what we are building is something that is actually useful to the customer, to the end user. We're going to deliver something that works. And evolutionary means that all the time we're going to be figuring out ways to do things better, either towards the tools, towards the process, towards the team, towards communication, towards collaboration, towards the end product, etc. And all different aspects that are involved. We have to make sure that we are continuously figuring out ways to do it better. And in the end, what we have to understand is that the human factor is the focal point. And what does this mean? What this means is that we have to understand that instead of focusing on managing a project, what we have to do is manage people. We have to manage the stakeholders. Because the stakeholders, in the end, are those who created the project. The process has to be something in which we use as a guidance to be able to create a project. But in the end, the people are the ones who do it. So we should focus on managing the people, ensuring that the human factor is at its highest potential, that people are highly motivated. Now, the goal is to do a continuous improvement of value towards the customer and towards the enterprise. And the key is this, that is a continuous improvement of the flow of value. So continuous flow and at the same time improving it. So this value innovation framework actually consists of 4 parts. One of them is innovative thinking. Then we have an innovation fostering environment and innovative tools. And well, as I mentioned, human factor being the pinnacle of this framework. So what is innovative thinking? Well, innovative thinking is figuring out a way to understand how we do things. We are very used to figuring out how things work. And that's what is known as analytic thinking. There's a problem, and what we do is break it down to small pieces so that we can actually know how those parts are made or how it works. And if we try to, from that, understand how that part, that component, that object actually is assembled, how it operates. But that doesn't actually give us the full understanding. So, for example, if we think about a car, what we could think is about, well, the engine, the wheels, the doors, the windows, etc., and begin to figure out how everything works and how it fits together. And then we can create a car. We can create a new car. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to create the right car for the customer. If what we do is utilize systems thinking, what systems thinking tells us is don't look inwards. What you have to do is look outwards. So if you think about an automobile, then you have to think about the why of the automobile. Why do we want an automobile, or why does the customer want an automobile? And doing that will allow us to understand whether the right solution of the automobile that we need to build is either an SUV, or a small compact car, or a big truck, or a trailer, or maybe it's not a car at all what we need to build for the customer. So we have to actually understand the customer and the customer's needs to then do that. Systems thinking is what allows us to do that, because systems thinking analyzes based on the system under which what we're going to create is going to operate. So what is the context of the car, right? What is the context of the customer? What is the context of that environment? And so on. So systems thinking is extremely important. We also have to understand that if we want to be able to innovate, we have to be willing to accept and to have and to actually foster the inclusion of mavericks in our teams. We want people who are not happy with the status quo. We want to have team members that are going to challenge what we're thinking, what we are deciding, what we are building, how we are building it, etc. Because that's actually what is going to allow us to start creating something new and different. So these kind of people, which some some leaders actually try to avoid because they don't want quote-unquote problems, actually should do the exact opposite. We want to have these people because they're going to bring new and really cool ideas. And also we want to make sure that we increase motivation. A motivated team, a motivated person is going to operate much better. And how do we do that? Well, if we give them the freedom to do things the way they want to do it, of course within certain parameters, but we give them as much autonomy as possible. We give them the possibility to self-organize. Then they're going to be more motivated. At the same time, if we give them the opportunity to be able to get better at what they do and to learn new things and to explore, then their level of mastery is going to increase. And also we have to make sure that they understand that there's a purpose into what they're doing. And that purpose has a tremendous benefit to the customer and to the enterprise, and it should also have a benefit to them as individuals. So having that sense of purpose is also going to help. So those three elements of autonomy, mastery, and purpose are key elements to increase motivation. And with a motivated team, then we can do wonders. In terms of the environment, we have to make sure first and foremost that all stakeholders are involved. It's not a good idea to say, okay, I'm going to involve the customer, and all I did with the customer was to have initial conversations, and then don't see the customer until the product is finished. What we want to do is to make sure that the customer is involved on a day-to-day basis in the creation of the product, and that we have his or her feedback and input continuously, and that the customer itself feels ownership over what is being created. We also have to make sure that within the team itself, everybody has that sense of ownership and responsibility. It's not actually a good idea to say, well, this is responsibility of the project lead or the manager or the director. It's actually everybody's responsibility to make sure that what falls on their plate is something they have to be careful about making it right. But also everybody has to be responsible about making sure that the context is right and that the service they are providing and the product they are creating is right. So the involvement has to be by everybody, and everybody has to share the ownership and the responsibility. The environment also has to give the space for exploration and failure. If we fill our team's time 100% with tasks to do, then they will never have the time to explore, to try to figure out something new, something better. And that will be probably the least of the problems. If we don't give them enough time to do things, then if something goes wrong or if there are defects, if there's a need to do some work with somebody else to get something done, they don't have the time to do it. So we have to make sure that the environment gives them enough slack so that they can actually do things right. Okay? And we should not punish people when something fails. Well, we should think about, a failure. I will replace that with an opportunity for improvement. As I mentioned earlier, we have to have tools that are highly visual. We have to have something that allows me to understand what exactly is going on with my process. To have a log of events to be able to quantify and to be able to identify root cause of issues that can come up along the way. And also, the tools have to help us increase the flow of value. That is, the tool has to give me the elements to allow me to identify whether or not the flow of value is happening or it's being interrupted. So think about this as if we have, say, a bottleneck that stops the flow of value from happening. The sooner we identify bottlenecks and the sooner we take care of them in an effective way, the sooner we're going to continue the flow of value. and of course, to as much as possible increase the flow of value without sacrificing quality. So what this means is not to increase the flow of value just for the sake of increasing it. So I don't know, probably instead of calling it increase of value, we should say something along the lines of optimizing the flow of value. And the quantitative tools, which will allow us to contribute in the change, in the evolutionary change of the way we do things. So the tools that we want to use are tools that allow us to increase the level of collaboration. It bothers me when I get to a work environment and I see everybody working in isolated cubicles. I think that decreases effectively in a significant way, because how can we ensure that what one person is doing is in agreement with what everybody else is doing, or in agreement with decisions that were made that morning? If we actually, what we do is increase collaboration by allowing people to work together, by having 2 or more people working on the same thing at the same time, then we will be able to get things done better in a better amount of time, and actually in agreement what is really the value that the customer is looking for. So what this means is human factor is the most important part. Everything that I mentioned that has to do with value innovation, in the end, tells us that if we do the right thing in terms of how we create our team and the way in which we collaborate with other stakeholders and the involvement that we have of the customer and, if possible, of the end user, then we're going to do much better. We're going to be able to actually come up with new ideas, and we're going to be able to start improving tools, improving processes, and so on. So I'm going to mention a couple of cases. Both of them are actually recent. And by recent, I mean from the last quarter of last year. One of them is an organization called CATED. What this organization does is develop both technology and content for remote learning at high school and university level. And when I began working with them, they were operating at the equivalent of CMMI level 2. Aspects that they needed to improve was they have very strong communication and collaboration issues, both internally and towards the customer. Delivering on time was a continuous struggle from their side. The quality wasn't bad, so that wasn't a main concern, but something that was hitting them pretty bad was the fact that they were working on too many projects at the same time, and they were trying to satisfy all of them simultaneously. So I started working with them by using value innovation. In terms of the thinking and the tools, what I did was use Lean Agile, and in terms of the tool itself, what I used was Kanban. So by putting all this together, by the third month, they had, by day 5, they had a value stream map of the entire organization. And this value stream map was a visualization of the entire process. But the importance was not necessarily that. The importance was that everybody in the organization, every single stakeholder understood the entire value stream. Everybody understood how the entire process worked and why. And that allowed them to make better decisions as to what it is that they themselves were doing. So that started improving actually quality and performance. Then by day 15, they had a new process up and running. And what they did was, by using Kanban, create an initial generic Kanban to make sure that everybody had the same level of understanding and that they have a common communication media. And then each group within the organization created its own unique Kanban. But this allowed the compatibility to exist. So what happened was that by the second month, the deliveries were on time 80% of the time. And the maintenance tasks which were consistently late, they were delivering actually at 100%, and there was also an increase in quality. Another case is a software development services company. Their customers are primarily financial and entertainment companies. This group worked at CMMI level 3.78 based on the last auditing they got. And the problem they were facing was similar to the other case, communication and collaboration issues. However, in this case, these issues were very, very strong. I actually got to witness actual, fights and people yelling at the meeting rooms. The process was actually very poor. Pretty much there was not one single person who understood the process. The quality was terrible. They had virtually no infrastructure, and they had a tremendous technical debt. And actually, the technical debt they had, to give an idea of how bad it was, they had been using 3 of their engineers working full-time for 1 year to take care of the technical debt, and they hadn't finished working on it. And they had to continually work overtime and on weekends, not to mention deliveries were consistently late. So we started going through the transformation, also by using Lean, Agile, and Kanban. And the changes that happened were as shown on the table. Before the transformation, they were working an average of 72 hours per week. By the time I started, taking some measurements and checking how the improvements were, the team was working 45 hours per week, which is still, a little bit over full time. They were working 9 hours, but still significantly less than at the beginning. And the number of defects actually, there was a tremendous change. Basically, after the transformation, in 1 month, they had less defects than what they were previously producing in 1 day. And the creation of requirement was taking them only 1/5 of the time. In terms of integration, they had nothing done in terms of, automation of integration. And through the transformation, they actually created a continuous integration system that was 90% automated. The communication with the customer, as I mentioned, it was really, really bad. After transformation was the best ever. I mean, we will see the customer voluntarily come over to talk to the team and explain things over, talk to them about their vision, how they want the product to be, etc. And the project itself, when I started working with them and they realized how bad the project was, they actually had decided to cancel the project, and I asked them to give it a chance to see if we could actually rescue the project. And what happened was that not only the project was rescued, but it was actually installed at 3 sites. And all this happened in a period of 4 months. And so obviously I was very happy about the results. They were actually, I have to confess, the results were better than I myself had expected. But to me, the greatest surprise was the fact that the customer itself liked it so much that he's adopting it as well. He's going through value innovation to adopt Lean, Agile, and Kanban, and they are very happy with it. So I think that these 2 cases can show that it's something that has good potential, and I invite everybody to consider. So just to wrap up, value innovation is a framework that helps accelerate competitive advantage and enterprise maturity. That is, this is not a replacement of what we have. This is something that is going to help us do it better and do it faster. And most importantly, it contributes to finding the right balance between the value to customer and the value to enterprise. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Masa. At this point, we would like to move into the Q&A session. To ask a question, just type it at the bar at the bottom of the Questions for Masa pod, and then click on the speech balloon to the right of that bar. We do have some questions. The first question, Masa, with today's fast-changing technologies, do you think customers can define value before they see the product service being offered? In other words, do enterprises need to put forth perpetual betas to test what is valuable?
Well, I would say that there's actually two approaches to this. I mean, one of them is we have to understand the reality that customers themselves don't really know what they want or what they need. They only have an idea of what it is they want or need. And it's our job to work with them to be able to polish that idea into something that can actually happen. So even with a fast-moving technology, I mean, the ideas come from somewhere, and that can be the customer. Another way to see this, and I think it's a great example, is the way Apple Computer creates products. Apple Computer actually doesn't go out to do market research or to ask customers. So the question is, okay, then how come that they produce these great products, right? And what they do is basically they put themselves the T-shirt of the customer. So what they say is, hey, what would be the coolest gadget, the coolest phone or the coolest, tablet that I could have? What would be like the ideal to me, the holy grail, of the product? And then start working based on that. So basically what I'm trying to say is that what we need to do is either help the customer identify what that is and allow ourselves, to bring a little bit and to impose, interesting challenges, or we can just ourselves go about creating that new market, by doing this. And this, by the way, something that I didn't mention, there is two concepts of value innovation. One of them, the original one that was coined by Chan Kim and Renee Melbourne, in which today value innovation is don't focus on competition, trying to compete against others. What you have to do is identify new markets and grow business by doing that identification. The way I think about value innovation is not that. Also, it is in alignment. The way I think about it is figure out new ways to increase the value to the customer and to the enterprise. And obviously, by talking about these new ways to do that, innovation in itself is implied. So those are two different approaches that I will say we can take to create a product.
Great, thank you. Our next question, how do I establish value flow?
Okay. What you have to do is, first off, make sure that all your stakeholders have a good understanding of the entire process. What you have to do next is to use a tool that allows you to create that value flow, and the one that I always recommend as the best one that I know is Kanban. And what this does is that you come to an agreement with the stakeholders as to what the priority in value is of what you want to create, and then you have the team work on tasks that are small, that add value based on those priorities that were established, and that the team itself actually takes the task to be done. That is, you don't assign them, they say them. And you control the amount of work that they are going to be doing at a given time. If you manage to do that, that is, if you limit the amount of work in progress, you establish a pull system that allows people to, by themselves, decide what they want to do, and you have the right priority of value, then you can begin to establish value flow.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Can you tell us more about effective quantification?
Okay. Effective quantification, what you want to do is, I will say, I'm going to be a little bit specific. If you can generate a cumulative flow diagram and you can generate a control diagram. The control diagram is a statistical process control diagram, both of which allow you to know, one of them, the amount of work that you are doing at a given time, and track down how much time is taking to finish those tasks. Then that allows you to, by changing the amount of work in progress, control the amount of time that tasks are taking. This would actually have tremendous changes in terms of being able to deliver things much more quickly. And if you use the statistical process control chart to also track down the activity in terms of how much time is taking to each task to get done, and you do a mapping between those times, the task, and the events around that task, then you can do a root cause analysis, and that gives you the opportunity to figure out what kind of improvements you can make to start reducing those times. And therefore, what you end up getting is, again, higher performance, because the amount of time to finish a task will be a lot less over time.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Masa. On behalf of everyone at Cutter, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. If you have further questions or comments about the content presented in today's webinar, we encourage you to call or email Cutter, or also you could call Masa at mmaeda@cutter.com.mx. Please visit cutter.com and go to the events section where you can register for other upcoming webinars and events.